Welcome to Rates and Barrels. Happy Thursday. It's Thursday, April 11th. Derek Van Riper here with Eno Saris. On this episode, we have an update involving the Ippei Mizuhara story, as it's become the former translator for Shohei Ohtani. We've got our first 2024 installment of Project Prospect, which is no longer a full episode, but a portion of an episode, or a segment, as we like to call it in the podcast world. We're also going to have a weekend waiver preview, talking about a few players that might be trending their way onto rosters this weekend. If not sooner, you might have some daily league opportunities to make moves for these players. And we got a few mailbag questions from our Discord to get to at the end of this episode as well. If you're not in the Discord yet, grab the link to join that. It is in the show description. How's it going for you on this Thursday?
Good. Red-eyed and allergic, as usual. But it's getting hot here now. So it's, it was 80 during my run yesterday. So I guess spring is over.
Well,
lasted like 2 weeks.
I have spring here now. It was 63, I think, when I ran on Tuesday.
So. Oh, and what's hilarious about the first 58-degree day in, I'm assuming Milwaukee, but in Boston, it was people were taking their shirts off and everyone's outside, and you're like, it's still kind of cold, guys.
Yeah, it's. I saw people walking around in shorts and t-shirts this weekend when it was in the mid 50s, and hey, you're a little early. You have gear for this temperature too, but you're choosing not to use it because you used it a few months ago, and you don't want to break it back out until October. So I understand it happens, but I'm glad things have finally progressed out of the dredges of winter here in the upper Midwest. So the breaking news of the last 24 hours, Ippei Mizuhara is negotiating a guilty plea in connection to the purported theft of money from his former friend, Shohei Ohtani. Federal prosecutors found evidence that Mizuhara may have stolen even more than the previously reported $4.5 million to pay for gambling debts. And the evidence alleges that Mizuhara altered the settings on Ohtani's bank account so Ohtani would not be aware of the transactions, which sort of answers the big question of, hey, wouldn't you get a notification if someone wired $500,000 out of your bank account at some time? Well, apparently not if you turn the settings and notifications off, as may have been the case here. So it seems like we're speeding along to a resolution. And, as this continues to move forward, it doesn't seem like Shohei Ohtani would face any sort of disciplinary action from Major League Baseball, given that, by the way, this is being reported, he was just a victim of theft.
Yeah, it's one of those updates that seems to follow the company line. It was Ohtani didn't do anything wrong here. Seems to follow along and kind of it gives us a little bit of detail. We're starting to hear a little bit more about how Ippei may have managed the finances and managed that whole bit. I wonder if we'll ever know the whole story. Is how I feel now, because I feel like we'll just get little drips and drabs from this. I don't know. It's an unfortunate thing. The thing that's so tough is that we'll just never really know how much Ohtani knew about the situation.
Right.
That takes getting all the way into someone's head. It's they'll just, it's not like he'll have written down something that is here, Ippei, this is for your gambling debts.
Right.
Or for my gambling debts.
Yeah, there's no canceled check or check receipt somewhere with the memo line.
Gambling debts. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I think this is also, it's gonna be those Rorschach things where just people are gonna believe what they believed from the beginning.
Yeah, I've been
trying to keep an open mind and trying to sort of sift through the evidence, but I don't know that we'll get all the evidence. And you got people boldly declaring all sorts of things. I guess that's sort of how the news cycle goes.
Yeah, not really the business I want to be in, but this kind of fits into one of the more likely progressions for the story. And I think the interest level went from, I don't know, a 9 or a 10 on the 1 to 10 scale when the story first broke, down to about a 2 or a 3 based on how people are reacting here on Thursday. So that's where things are. You can read the latest in the Athletic and on the New York Times. They had a story about it that came out on Wednesday night.
Ohtani being suspended is in the single digits now, percentage-wise.
I'd be stunned at this point based on what has been reported if that were to happen. Now, a lot of things are happening on the field. So we begin today with Jackson Holliday. He made his debut with the Orioles on Wednesday, 0 for 4 with an RBI. Totally makes sense. And I think maybe the logic for the Orioles in sending him down was that the first level at which Jackson Holliday had any sort of resistance in terms of competition was AAA last year. And even still, a 109 WRC plus in a small sample as a 19-year-old at AAA is fantastic. They sent him back down. He spent 10 games there. He was breaking AAA. He had a 182 WRC plus in the brief time he was there this year, right? He was striking out less than he did last year at the level. He was
whole team was annihilating AAA.
I mean, poor AAA Charlotte. They've been on the receiving end of a lot of it so far, but I think as far as just saying, okay, let's make sure he's completely ready, they ticked that box quickly. I didn't think it would take long, but where do we go from here? I mean, projections for Jackson Holliday are underwhelming. The Bat X has him at 257, 330, 378. That doesn't quite line up with my personal expectations for Holliday, but just how far away from the projection are you willing to set your own expectations?
One thing, the one addendum that I'd give to what you said about, the way he blew through the minor leagues was that spring training, though he did fine, did have one little warning marker, which was a weird 31% strikeout rate. So I think that was sort of part of it too, was like, these two things together. Let's put him back down there in AAA. And then it was like, well, it's painfully obvious. Also, sometime around the time that he came up is just around where you get that extra year of team control. Just need to throw that out there. And so, whether or not it was wrangling or just trying to get him to prove that AAA was not useful for him anymore, he's back up. The big thing that I'm watching is swing strike rate. It's been really low, but it has kind of risen in spring training against major leaguers. And so I wonder, again, I will always wonder with the 20, 21% guys, when they get to the big leagues, is it going to stay around there or is it going to jump? And then, the power I think is an interesting thing because he's had some times with the power look like it could be legs. And we don't have a tracked exit velocity above 108.2 for him in sort of in the major league way. Like I'm sure there's other people who have minor league track records for him, but I don't have those in front of me. So that's where the growth lies. The question lies in the strikeout rate, and the growth lies in the power. I think the baseline for him is for the rest of the season. I would give him an easy 260, 275, 10 to 15 homers, and 10 plus steals. Again, is it the 15 or 20 homers? That gives you a rookie of the year.
Right. And that, of course, would change the service time outcome for Holliday, too. If he's top 3 in the AL and rookie of the year voting, he accrues a year of service time, always get rewarded. There's a few ways this can play out, too, with the new rules. So it's still an early enough.
Maybe that's why they played with it. They're like, because he's going to be top 3 in the rookie of the year. He might even win top 3 in the rookie year. That he gives us a pick. Let's get the extra year back so that when we lose the extra year.
Mm-hmm.
So. God, like I'm laughing about it, but it's sad. But it's like, someone has modeled this out. Someone has thought about this.
Yeah, it's just the weird part of managing baseball rosters. You have a set of rules. You have to work within those rules and try and do the best you can as an organization. It's not always doing the straight line, let's put our best players on the roster sort of approach. But I think with Holliday, he's shallow league relevant. Even if there's a possibility that he comes in a little lighter than other players that you would have in your middle infield, there's a chance that he exceeds the numbers you threw out there. Some percentage chance that is higher than most. Mm-hmm. I do think when you have really young for the level prospects who are not putting up the max exit velos that we tend to look for, it is less problematic. This came up back in the days when Wander Franco was a prospect. I think that's going on here to some extent with Jackson Holliday. I also think if you read some of the reports about physically how he looks this year compared to last year, a lot of that physical growth has taken place since last season. So it would surprise me very little if he has a few of the hardest hit balls we've ever seen against big league pitching, simply because he is stronger now than he was over the last 2 seasons as he was making his way through the minor leagues.
I mean, nobody underlined that better than a guy who just came to San Francisco this week in CJ Abrams. Took a high and tight 94 from Kyle Harrison, that's lefty on lefty, and went center tank through Triple's alley, past almost into the water. And I was like, this man has grown man power. And I was sitting here talking about his max exit velo 2 years ago. So I think, I was also looking at Jackson Churrio's numbers, and there's some rumblings on the Discord about, should I trade Jackson Churrio in a redraft, because 30% strikeout rate, 14% swing strike rate, not a great max EV, not a great hard hit rate. And maybe, but maybe not, dude. Maybe not, because growth can happen even within a season. And I think we've already seen some of this coming with Jackson Churrio. And if this is a bad 10 days for Jackson Churrio, you know what I mean?
He'll be fine. If this is a bad 10-day stretch for him, there's no demotion risk. There's nothing to be worried about whatsoever. He moves around the lineup a little bit. I think if he settles in, he'll be high in the lineup consistently. I think it's more right now a case of trying to put him in spots to be successful and build up his confidence. I think we're going to see some of that with Jackson Holliday too, because the Orioles have the luxury of a lot of other good players. Like, you don't have to put immediate pressure on Jackson Holliday. You're trying to win games right now and develop players. So, walk that line as you see fit. So I think that totally makes sense. But I would agree, like, the first 10 major league games for any player, you don't want to draw a lot of conclusions about that. Like, that's a very slippery slope, especially when you're talking about some of the elite prospects in the game. You were saying, 260 to 275, 10, 15 homers, and I think 10 steals was sort of your baseline expectation for Holliday. What kind of veteran player has a projection like that? That's sort of the next iteration of finding the appropriate short-term comp, right? Like, who else does something like that?
Let's see here. I'm gonna look at 2023 and sort by stolen bases, not in the elite. I actually could look a little bit like Randy Arozarena light. Tyro Estrada last year pretty much nails it.
Oh, whose numbers actually fit that pretty closely? Brian Hayes, projection-wise, 261, 15 homers, 71 and 66, I think, for runs and RBIs, 16 steals. I mean, that's, again, a very good player from the start. And
I think the Tyro Estrada one's funny, though, because you, in a 10 or in my kid's 6-person league, whatever, like, you could have Tyro Estrada and Jackson Holliday could be out there. And I would make that switch.
Right, because of the ceiling potential. If it doesn't work, you can go back and find someone else on the wire similar to Estrada. You're not going to find someone with that, even if it's a lower percentage outcome. You're not going to find that ceiling.
Would you drop Brian Hayes in that situation for Holliday? I guess so. Maybe.
Yeah, in a super shallow league. Yeah. Brian Hayes has had enough bites at the apple at the big league level where. Would
you drop Andres Jimenez?
Ooh, probably not. That's closer to the line. I think there's also a little more categorical juice that I expect from the stolen bases from Jimenez. So it's 2024 only. I think I'd take Jimenez over Jackson Holliday, and that has freezing cold takes potential just written.
How about George Springer and Cody Bellinger?
Spicy. No, would you take Holliday over those guys for 2024? Oh, you're thinking about it.
They're old.
Come on, man. You loved George Springer 2 months ago.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I can't do it. Though Cody Bellinger's kind of a boring ass start, I'll have to say.
Yeah, well, it's early. It's still very, very early. Let's move along through some other prospect-related items. Spencer Arrighetti, I saw an unbelievable number of spaghetti jokes in the timeline. This has probably been happening to Spencer Arrighetti his entire life. I mean, you can't look at his name and not just see spaghetti. It's in there. It's right there. You just knock a few letters out and it just says spaghetti. I get it. But this guy's just trying to live his life. Just try to pitch in the big leagues, which is hard enough. We don't need the what is your spaghetti policy? But the debut was shaky. 3 innings, 7 earned, 7 hits, 3 walks, 3 Ks. He's supposed to get at least one more start, according to Chandler Rome of The Athletic. And it's because Framber Valdez has left elbow inflammation. To this point, nothing more serious has been detected by further imaging, at least that we know about. It's just inflammation for now. What did you see from Arrighetti, even though the surface results were disappointing? Did you see an arsenal that was impressive, even though it wasn't necessarily effective the first time out?
I don't know, man. The fact that he had 95 was decent. He had some good swing strike rates in the minors. Model didn't really like it. It seems like an emergency type situation. The 4-seam fastball looks pretty average, and a lot of his red on his on his Baseball Savant page are horizontal, which it can work, but it's kind of a weird combination to have this really sideways sweeper with a 4-seam. So I remain, and the last reason that I remain a little bit worried is 30 command grades and walk rates that were pretty bad. So I think that's part of the picture as well. So I'm mostly out.
You're not going down the road of, hey, the Astros do this all the time. I thought if we're going to get something good from Spencer Arrighetti, be that in the immediate future or probably more likely in the long-term future, maybe it's like a Reese Olson sort of package where you see some pretty big strikeout rates in the minors, but also with some control issues that need to be ironed out. That low command grade is the biggest thing for him to overcome. I don't think it's the quality of his pitches that's going to be the problem. I do think it's his ability to locate that's going to determine whether or not he is a good or average or even a successful big league starter, or if he ends up eventually moving to the bullpen. But I think by need, he's at least going to be an up and down guy for the Astros this season. If he doesn't turn into something a bit more, because they're struggling with depth right now because of a few injuries. A few other prospect injury notes to follow up on. Good news here. Junior Caminero could return from the 7-day IL by this weekend. That's according to Mark Topkin of the Tampa Bay Times. I think we're at the point right now, given that the injury was previously reported to be relatively minor, Caminero is still probably a stash for most folks, and probably the best available position player stash in the minors now that Jackson Holliday got the call.
Yes, definitely. Although I have a one for a little bit later that is more of a long shot. But yeah, definitely Junior Caminero, the best in the minors. James Wood, Dylan Cruz, right there.
I think I'd still, if I could only have one, in most redraft situations, you're looking to be able to stash one. I think it's Caminero that I prefer.
Okay, I'm with
more
you.
Polish on the hit tool is the biggest reason. I think there's more questions still about Wood and even Dylan Cruz in that regard. We haven't seen as much of Cruz in the minor league since he was drafted last summer. But I do think Dylan Cruz is one of those guys that in a very short sample somehow temporarily lowered his long-term stock enough where he became a reasonable target, and the opportunity to do that should fade pretty quickly. Some follow-ups from Milwaukee. Jeferson Quero will have season-ending shoulder surgery. It's a torn labrum. Initially, they described it as a dislocated shoulder, so they're waiting for inflammation to go down, but there is significant damage in there, so he's going to miss the 2024 season. So pretty big loss for the Brewers from a catching depth perspective. This is a guy that's actually one of the best catching prospects in baseball. So now his debut is on hold for another year. On the pitching side, Robert Gasser scheduled for 2 innings at extended spring training on Saturday. So you could see probably a lengthy rehab assignment for him sort of stretching out. But given some of the issues the Brewers are dealing with, already using Aaron Ashby earlier in the week, I think Robert Gasser is becoming a more important part of their 2024 plan than people previously anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, DL Hall's velo doesn't look that great. His stuff didn't look that great. Is Jacob Mizorowski, his timeline pushed up, when he's ready to go, is that a possibility? I think they're going to throw anybody they think can help them win games, because they're still winning games, and they're doing it suboptimally in terms of with their starting staff. So I think anybody who pitches well in their system right now will be good. We'll get a look from them.
And with Gasser, there's a lot more experience at AAA, 135 in a third innings last year, plus 26 in a third to finish 2022. There's really not much left for him to prove at that level. He cut the walk rate last year. The Ks have been there. Good
Mizorowski has rates. More to prove with the walk rate for sure.
And they sent Mizorowski back to AA to begin this season. So he's in Biloxi right now, not Nashville. I think Mizorowski's more of an August sort of call up for them, and maybe even in a bullpen role initially, even if they still like him long-term as a starter. And I think Gasser's the guy that ultimately maybe falls into the number 3, number 4 starter role over the course of this season. So track his rehab, try to stash him where you can. He's probably a little too far away to stash and redraft right now, but I think there's going to be a point soon where you're going to want to add Gasser to those rosters.
I got a little pop-up prospect for us.
Oh, yeah.
A little random going off of the rundown.
I love it.
A little sword action. This dude leads AA in home runs, and he was a round 3 pick in 2022. So it's not really out of nowhere. He does play for an organization that I sort of doubt their ability to have a great impact on player development, but there are some changes under the hood. Colby Thomas has 3 home runs already, and in his first taste of AA. So it's kind of funny. There's that big jump. I mean, I'm not saying that I care about results on a week level in the minor leagues, but it is interesting to make the jump from single A to AA and just do it hitting the ground running. Underneath the hood, best swing strike rate if the season ended right now, but a little bit of an improvement in swing strike rate. And then he went from pulling the ball a lot to pulling the ball all the time, 63% pull percentage. That could go either way. We could see the strikeout rate kind of go up, or we could see him really establish that he's a power hitter. That's kind of where it goes with the extreme pull guys. So just a guy to watch. Colby Thomas looking good right now, power and speed. And if he can keep the strikeout rate under 25%, then maybe an okay batting average with that power and speed combo.
Yeah, great start for him so far. Let's see how these next few weeks play out.
5'10", 190. Ooh, I kind of love this guy.
Yeah, I don't always trust the back of the baseball card heights and weights on prospects.
Very much true.
It could be a little random, but
yeah,
we'll see. We'll see if we actually get some eyes on him. See if it's a real 5'10", 190. River Ryan has been placed on the 60-day IL with shoulder fatigue. That's according to Jim Callis of MLB.com.
That's such a weird separation of diagnosis and move.
Yeah.
His shoulder's a little fatigued. 60 days.
Well, there's nothing about River Ryan that's
normal.
That's ordinary. I mean, you look at the way people assess and rank him in the prospect community, and you have the high folks, people like Eric Longenhagen. Eric Longenhagen is in his top 20 overall. He's 19th on that list. Keith Law had him at 33. Our buddy James Anderson has him at 166. The reason being is there is significant reliever risk in the profile, but the thing about River Ryan that makes him so interesting is there's this sort of DeGrom-ish late bloomer potential, which is a super unfair thing. I regret saying that. I'm not going to edit it out. I'm not going to ask Ryan to edit that out. But he's a former two-way player, right? He started pitching late, and he has 4 pitches, and 3 of them are above average, and the command might not be that bad. And the other odd thing about River Ryan is that the Dodgers acquired him from the Padres. That's all very weird and very interesting. So huge K rates in the minors. I think a big part of it, is that 60-day IL means you're on the 40-man roster. And 40-man roster spots are precious. And if you are someone who threw 104 innings last year, you could very easily get to whatever limit the organization has for you if you take 2 months off. Like you could still get close to like 130, 140 and be available for the postseason. And regardless of what you think River Ryan's long-term role is, I think you could probably objectively look at his stuff and his ability to miss bats and say, he's probably on that roster in October if he's healthy. So maybe it's more of a roster management, long-term health play where, yeah, there's a real injury here and we don't really need him now. So we're going to let this thing calm down, bring him up in June, have him pitch a little at AAA, and then see what our needs are at that time. That's sort of the vibe I get from how they're handling this. Or something worse is there and they'll tell us about that later. That's always a possibility. But I'm going to stay on the optimistic side and hope it's more of the former.
Yeah, it's the back end of the Dodgers rotation. There's a big question mark in Clayton Kershaw, and right now they're filling it with some interesting guys, but Emmett Sheehan is hurt. I'm not a big Michael Grove fan. I'm not probably as much of a Gavin Stone fan as others, and so maybe there's some daylight there where Clayton Kershaw says, no, I actually need the whole year. James Paxton says it's time for my yearly break. Emmett Sheehan's not back, and they don't really want to go Yarbrough Grove a lot. But there's still Kyle Hurt, so it's there's a lot for him to be in the majors, I think, other than a reliever this year.
Still got Landon Knack. There's another guy that they could use at some point. He's working as a starter right now at AAA. He's gone at least 5 each of his first 3 starts. So I always love to see how the Dodgers pull it together. And just think about where people were on Emmett Sheehan this time last year. Someone's going to pop in that system. That's just the way Dodgers player development tends to go. Just a question of who it's going to be. A couple other injury things to get to. Walker Jenkins, one of the top prospects in the Twins organization, is on the IL right now in Fort Myers due to a hamstring strain. Doesn't sound too serious, but that's why he's not playing right now if you're looking for some early season numbers from him. There's still a prospect already in the big leagues. Ceddanne Rafaela is likely going to see some time in the middle infield. This is according to Jen McCaffrey of The Athletic. Initially, Alex Cora said they weren't going to try and move Rafaela around to help backfill in the middle infield with Trevor Story suffering that season-ending shoulder injury. They have changed course on this. The defense at center field is phenomenal. This is why people are pretty confident in the floor with Rafaela. The bigger question is going to come down to the adjustments he makes at the plate. And so far, the start to 2024 looks a lot like what we saw in the brief time he was up in 2023. The K rate's up over 30%, right? The walk rate's under 5%. And he may never be someone that draws a lot of walks. Some guys are just good hit tool guys that swing a lot. 48.9% O swing percentage is a problem for anyone. Even if you're a good bad ball hitter, you're probably swinging too much at pitches outside the zone when you're living near 50%. So I'm starting to wonder if Rafaela needs to turn things around at the plate in the next couple of weeks while Vaughn Grissom works his way back to avoid getting a brief taste of AAA again. Because I think there's a growing chance they want him to iron out some of these plate discipline issues against the lower level of competition before bringing him back up for probably an extended run again. But I'm worried, as someone who has Rafael on a few rosters, I'm worried the bottom could fall out, at least temporarily, with playing time, despite his versatility and his defensive value.
Speaking of bottom, I've got a graph for those who want to see it. It's a little bit small. You might have to make your screen bigger. But if you look at this, basically, just as a grouping of players, what I've got is walk rate on the left, K rate on the bottom, and then by color is their isolated power. And the reason I did this is I wanted just to show you that, like, okay, 22% is league average. So you can actually cut this thing into quadrants, right? And if you look at it, you're just like, okay, the bottom right quadrant is the worst quadrant. That's low walk rate, high strikeout rate. But if you've got a red dot you can make it work. And so Jose Siri is down there in that part. Luke Raley has a red dot. Adam Duvall has a red dot. Those guys have made it work. Christian Encarnacion Strand is down there. He's got a gray dot. So, he could go either way, but, he's got that power profile that makes it work, right? Now, if you look down there and you look at the blue dots, now you're looking at probably the worst players in baseball over the last year. So you've got Kevin Smith down there, Christian Betancourt, Oscar Gonzalez, Edmund Sosa, Trevor Story. I know there's the injury component, but that's what you're looking at down there in the bottom right. Elu Harris Montero. So you're looking at, you have a bad walk rate, you have a bad strikeout rate, and you're not giving me power. That's the grouping that you're seeing down there. And that's where you find Ceddanne Rafaela. So he needs to hit for power if he's going to have this kind of approach, or he needs to hit for contact if he's not going to have that power. He has to do one of the two things. Given his inherent swing strike rate, I think it has to be the power. And then looking at his kind of, his exit velos, his historical power, I'm becoming a lot more pessimistic about him. The one thing that does happen, though, and of course, obligatory, Aaron Judge breaking my map. That's that dot at the way top.
That red dot at the very top of the screen. That's almost near the key. If it was further to the right, it'd be like kind of hidden back in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Nolan Shanuel is great because he's one of the few people in the top left. Great walk rate, great strikeout rate, dark blue dot. He's up there hanging out with Pavin Smith, JP Crawford, Sal Frelick's up there in the left top with a blue dot, and Anthony Rendon. In any case, it's a fun map. I'll tweet it out later with the show so you can see it in more detail. But the thing that I was looking through, and this is the name that I teased earlier as an interesting name at the top of the minors that may have something to do with this, is that so the bat is like borderline major leaguer right now. Like it's pretty bad. And he has some work he has to do. Who plays in center field if he goes? And I don't have a great answer for you because Tyler O'Neill is listed on that depth chart, but he had like a 0 outs above average. There's not that many guys that you take that have a 0 outs above average. You put him in center. Like you take him from the corner and put him in center. What are the other options? Jaron Duran lost a pop-up in left field that went right to him. And I don't know what happened. Maybe there was some sunlight issues, but like if he's going to miss balls that go right to him, and we know he doesn't run good routes, like he's not my guy. Wilyer Abreu's not my guy. Roman Anthony's my guy.
Oh,
Roman Anthony's my guy. He's got this weird thing with a strikeout rate is not consistent. And right now he's striking out too much, but it's really early. Like give me 2 weeks and Roman Anthony's strikeout rate is 23%. I don't know, maybe. You got to find somebody in center.
He's played 13 games above high A. This would be closer to like a Michael Harris level of aggression if they were to give him 6 more weeks at Double A and say, all right, you're our best option. Let's go. Right. That's because didn't Michael Harris have like 40 games or so at Double A when the Braves brought him up and they said, we know the glove's ready. We think the approach is good enough. Let's see what happens. And they were right.
I think the flip side is that Roman Anthony's still powerfully young too. Like it's not like I think Harris was a little bit older.
Yeah, Harris was his age 21 season when he debuted.
Yeah, Anthony's 19 right now. So it might be pushing the realm of what's actually possible. But I do look at this team and wonder, and that's what's going to keep Rafaela in the big leagues. So it's weird that they're now talking about the middle infield because the need seems more stringent in center.
Yeah. The who would they play in center field question is a real one. I wonder, is there a bad team that has a good defensive center fielder that you could get for next to nothing without swinging some kind of big trade? I'm not talking about
Doyle.
The Rockies are gonna see that one through. We know how they operate. But
who's playing center and for the White Sox now that Robert's hurt?
I love that. So the first place your mind went.
Yeah.
Dominic Fletcher, Kevin Pillar. Well, there's your guy that.
Kevin Pillar. There we go.
Kevin Pillar for nothing, and he's your 9-hitter. And you give Rafaela a couple weeks in the minors.
It's just not as bad as Rafaela with the stick, and not as good as Rafaela with the glove, but sort of sticks it out for you. Maybe if the Reds start getting healthier, Stuart Fairchild.
I like that. He's looked pretty good in this series that the Brewers and Reds have been playing. Pulled a home run back from Willy Adames, I think.
Oh, how about a big trade though? Jazz,
like that's
kind of a fun one.
That's a fun one because Jazz is, I think, interesting enough in center field where he's an upgrade over what you have right now, but you don't have to keep him there long term. If you want Roman Anthony to be your center fielder in the long run, you can move Jazz to a corner. You can easily tweak that later. You can move Jazz back to the dirt if you want to at some point.
I kind of like this one. What you've got 3 years of team control, so it's going to have to be a big deal. But it fits a real need. You could put Ceddanne in the deal, give them back something that they can work on for a while. You'd have to put more in, but
I like where this is going.
It's an idea.
Yeah. And guys that have that less than patient approach don't seem to be, well, a different Marlins front office now, but Rafaela is a good player. Long term, I just think it's going to be a winding road potentially before he's doing all the things he's capable of doing at the plate at the major league level. So yeah, maybe that's the angle. The other part of this though is like, what do the Red Sox expect from their roster this year? How aggressive they want to be trying to win right away versus letting it play out with players they like in the long run. I think that's another consideration because if you believe that Rafaela is a potentially elite center fielder, that's a valuable thing to have. You could play Roman Anthony in a corner instead of playing him in center, right? You have a lot of different ways you can slice it. But all this is to say, Rafaela's short-term outlook is cloudy, even though they're going to move him around, even though he's got that defensive value.
Right.
Speaking of the Red Sox, some potentially good news. Nick Pivetta could return soon after the 15-day minimum stint on the IL. And with the flexor injury, I was thinking initially that might be a lot longer, but we'll take it. In a time where a lot of the pitching injuries have been major injuries, the possibility of this being a relatively minor one is at least still on the table.
My bold prediction that the Boston would be a top 5 starting rotation in the big league in the American League seems pretty milquetoast right now because Boston has the best starting pitching in the big leagues.
Yeah, you're riding high right now.
Well, we'll see how this continues. I don't personally believe so much in Whitlock's start, but I'm buying the rest. Houck, Cutter, Bayo, I think they're good pitchers, and Pivetta too. So just get healthy.
Well, do you want me to get the fire truck? You can do a victory lap around the kitchen.
Yes. Thursday, April 11th.
I take a victory lap for my Red Sox bold prediction. No, that's not your style. That's why we love you. Yoán Moncada. Bad news division. Out 3 to 6 months with an adductor strain. I don't think it's a bad one. It's got to be like a grade 2+, right? Like somehow in between grade 2 and grade 3. Yeah, like that's not good. If it doesn't heal well, surgery's on the table. That's what you would think with that 6-month long end timetable. This is just turning into a disaster season for the White Sox, whose best players are dropping like flies all of a sudden.
With similar injuries.
Yeah.
I think the third one that's like sort of hernia, groin, oblique, adductor, like that's the core, core. These are core muscle problems, and you gotta look at your training. You gotta look at your training process. You gotta like I know it's only 3 guys, and you could say it was just 3 guys and some of them had injuries before, but the oblique is hugely important, and so you need to think about things internally, I think.
Do you remember when Tyler Thornburg got traded to the Red Sox and misread the training program and got hurt? Like he did stuff wrong, and it was a complete accident. Like it, it, it was awful. It turned into like shoulder and thoracic outlet. Like, I wonder. I sometimes wonder when we see a cluster of injuries like this that are so similar. Like, was
Is there a
something
communication problem?
It was just something wrong in the training program? Like, what caused like this group of injuries that are so similar to impact all these guys? I mean, it could be nothing, could be a coincidence, but it's odd to say the least. So I once again look at this depth chart and I say, okay, well, who's playing? Is someone interesting playing right away? No. Lennon Sosa's grabbing all the playing time right now. I think the interesting name to watch for is Brian Ramos later this season. With a lengthy absence from Moncada, if Brian Ramos looks ready in the minors, Colson Montgomery looks ready in the minors, having a spot wide open on the left side of the infield, another spot that wouldn't have been previously, gives you a chance to maybe see both of those guys. One guy plays short, Ramos plays third. There you go. 2 prospects up by the end of the season.
Yeah, and I picked up Ramos. One thing I like is, decent walk rates, decent strikeout rates, decent ISOs. One thing I will point out, and probably the reason why he does not, get all the way to the top of your various, he's 50th, I think, on Fangraphs. But the reason he doesn't go up higher is that the strikeout rate comes with fairly high swing strike rates for Brian Ramos. The walk rates are inconsistent, and the ISOs are never over 200. That's sort of a benchmark I like to be like, oh, that's kind of realish power. So he could just come up to the big leagues, put up a worse walk rate than average, a worse strikeout rate than average, an average ISO, and not be super exciting, at least right away. But I have stashed him in a couple of places. Oscar Colas is also getting some burn. And he was a Lodum favorite. Lodum is the opposite of model. There's
Spelled incorrectly.
Spelled incorrectly. A lot of things that we shouldn't like about him at 25. You got to discount a lot of his minor league numbers because he's been older for the level for a lot of those. And his defense is really poor. And the barrel rates haven't been amazing, been a little bit up and down power wise. But you can flip that on his head and say, hey, here's a guy who's got playing time. And playing time is as much as anything. And it's only one plate appearance so far, but I see the roads. I see the sort of the waves parting where at some point it's going to be like, well, he's on the major league roster and Eloy's hurt and Robert's hurt and Moncada's hurt. So that we've got to play him. Right. So I see more playing time coming for Colas in the next week.
Yeah, they brought him up on Wednesday, so here it is. They should let him get regular run, especially with all the injuries they've got right now. I do like Ramos, for Auto New as someone that could become relevant in a 12-team league relatively quickly. I do think Ramos has a bat that I believe in. I'm a little more optimistic than you are, but I think it is good to point out the swinging strike rate's not necessarily dovetailing the way we'd like to see with the plate skills he's shown. He's been also very young for the level, though, too, so I think there's still some growth potential for Brian Ramos's bat. Speaking of playing time, if you're thinking about the weekend waiver wire, Colton Cowser, after a pretty quiet start, just being kind of sporadically used, seems to be taking over a larger share of the role. Austin Hayes has been a little bit quiet early on. Cowser started back-to-back games Tuesday and Wednesday. It still could be more of a big side platoon role for Cowser, but he was under 30% rostered in the RotoWire Online Championship when I looked this morning. So I think there's an opportunity here. He's under 40% rostered in CBS leagues. Are you buying that the Orioles are willing to start shifting things around a little bit, given what Cowser showed this spring and given the early struggles of Austin Hayes?
So on the 9th, they faced Bayo. It's a righty changeup guy. And on the 10th, righty changeup guy, you could have actually played Austin Hayes. Right?
Yeah, right and right changeups are not ideal, right? So
right. And the next day, Cutter Crawford, I think Cowser is probably a better matchup against Cutter Crawford than a right on right Hayes. Crawford's got like 3 breaking balls and a big fastball with ride. But the Bayo one is interesting. We haven't yet seen him start against the lefty. So I would say that part's not on the table. But it is interesting to kind of pair this with the Jackson Holliday move. It's if the Jackson Holliday move is more about let's just put these guys on the table and go for a run, right? Or then more that than, oh, we got the extra year, we get the extra year back, and like all that machinations. Then maybe it's just time to play the young guys that are good and make Hayes more of a fourth outfielder. That could be what we're seeing. I do you want something more definitive?
No, go ahead. I mean, if you got something else, go ahead. Otherwise, we can keep it rolling.
I just mean like I'm not being definitive.
No, I think big side platoon expectations are fair right now. I don't think they're going to turf Austin Hayes completely. I think the fact that he's sharing with the righty,
he's too much of a good player to just like let go completely. Okay, yeah, I'll take big side platoon. Austin Hayes a little bit more than small side platoon.
So then you have to kind of look at the the upcoming schedule for the next week. Or even just like if we're doing the waiver search, kind of start it for the following Monday because you're thinking about it from a weekly league perspective. The Orioles have 5 out of 6 matchups against righties coming up next week. They do see 3 lefties the following week, the week of April 22nd. So maybe you get a little uptick in playing time for a week and a slight drop. Also depends on who else is healthy. But 5 out of 6 in a week, that's enough to at least stream Colton Cowser next week.
Varland, Paddock, Lopez, Marsh. To open the week. What's interesting there is that if you have that kind of league where it's a weekly league, but you can move hitters in and out on Thursday, Cowser, Varland, Paddock, Lopez, Marsh, you could take him out to avoid the Reagans. He might sit against Reagans.
Yeah, you have to sit him for the whole weekend if you do that in most leagues, but still, you get the first part of the week, which is the back end. A couple of the back end starters for the
Twins. But it does make him hard because then the next week you are looking at Tyler Anderson, JP Sears,
Detmers,
Nestor Cortez, Carlos Rodon. Like you might not even want to start him at all that week. So when I see something like this, I say I'm not going to pay $200 out of my $1,000 for Colton Cowser.
Yeah. And I think in some of the shallow leagues where he's more widely available, he could be a recipient of some pretty big
daily leagues, a little bit different.
Yeah. Daily moves leagues, he should be rostered because things are trending in the right direction and you can lean away from the times when he's not in the lineup. Let's talk about Cody Bradford for a moment. He was a big ad over the weekend. We didn't really talk about him on the Monday show, but I think with another strong performance on Wednesday, yeah, sure, it was against the A's. He's on even more radars. Great start to the season for him. 1.40 ERA at these first 3 starts. K rate's up a little. Walk rate's down a little. Is it more of the same from Bradford? I mean, how do you see him fitting into this Rangers rotation? And just how far into shallow league territory do you think Bradford goes?
It's funny because here's another one of my he was like one of my deep league draft and hold 700th pick sleepers, and I'm excited that he's done this, but I have to kind of flip and be like, I don't think he's a shallow leaguer. My evidence for this is that this curveball, I'm really surprised that Stuff Plus thinks it's average because the curveball is 75.5 miles per hour. With below average drop and below average horizontal movement. So somehow that grades out to an average or slightly above average curveball. I'm not really sure how. So, and that is his first breaking ball that has ever averaged, has had a Stuff Plus above average. He's still throwing the slider that Stuff Plus hates. And at his core, he's a 4-seam changeup guy. And Stuff Plus does see that. It'll give him a decent, it gives him a 90 Stuff Plus on the fastball. That's okay for his velo, and a 103 on the changeup. So at his core, fastball changeup, and then he's throwing this really slow curve that doesn't have outstanding movement. It's a kind of just is that okay? That's your solution? You know what I mean? I think it's a little bit a trick of the schedule. Is how I would say is that he's somebody I like in certain situations, but Oakland and Chicago, to start the season, the one good start was against Houston. I'm gonna say he's a 15-team kind of stream type, maybe a team streamer, which is somebody you put on your roster but you don't start every week. That's the furthest I'll push him.
Yeah, I think 7 2/3, one earned run allowed against the Astros, second time
That's a
out.
pretty good start.
That's a really good start. He's got to win every single game he's pitched so far too, which is fluky and random. But I don't know, man. It's I don't think it's a breakout, but I think he's giving them something they really need with the starters that are out right now, and could be better than Lorenzen, could be better than Heaney, even if Heaney can't fix things. I think there's a
slightly bigger arsenal than Heaney, right? Like Heaney's still kind of plugging along at 2 pitches.
Yeah.
And it's got to be better the command than Heaney. So we got a 3-pitch guy who does throw a 4-pitch that's bad, but like he kind of only breaks it out against lefties, the slider.
No need for a deep dive here, but is there an Atlanta starter you're trying to pick up this week in place of Strider? I mean, you look at the upcoming schedule. Alan Winans was supposed to get that chance Wednesday. That game got rained out. Bryce Elder, Hurston Waldrop, AJ Smith-Shawver. We talked a bit about this group on Monday. The way the schedule lines up, the Strider spot is at Houston to begin next week on Tuesday, so you're not playing any of those guys against the Astros anyway, but you're basically looking down the road to a 2-start week at home if there's one guy that emerges to get that, with the Marlins and the Guardians on tap. In some deep leagues, you got to be a little bit ahead playing 1 week further out. I love that schedule. Is there someone you actually want to use and have rostered for those turns?
If I hear Bryce Elder has got the drop, I'll take it.
You'll take the chance on it because he pitched well for the
more
first
polished.
half.
He's a polished guy.
Did you see any changes in spring from him?
Yeah.
Like good changes?
I don't know why. Yeah, his stop loss was up. He was one of the biggest gainers. I don't have a real reason why. But also he was a guy who outperformed his stuff last year and had a good changeup and had multiple pitches. And it's just kind of a polished, like a young polished guy. It's kind of an interesting a guy to look at. So Elder, Smith-Shawver, that's more of a like, you really want to roll the dice, but because I also just don't know how many innings they'll let Smith-Shawver pitch in each of those games. Whereas I think if you're looking for wins, which normally you are in this situation, Elder is more likely to pitch deeper into the game.
Yeah, especially if you don't really know going into the weekend. Elder, if he's available in your league, could be a really inexpensive pickup now at the uncertainty. It takes the ability of having an extra roster spot available, but that might be the smart play. Interesting stuff did tick up a bit in the model during the spring. I'm curious what you make of José Soriano. He got the start against the Rays on Wednesday. He's working in the rotation right now for the Angels. Watching him, he had a bit of a funky first inning. There were a couple infield hits. There was a wild pitch with the bases loaded that allowed 2 runs to score, and he kind of settled down a little bit after that. Finished with 6 Ks in the outing, so maybe there's at least some deep league appeal. What do you think about José Soriano in terms of stuff? The walk rates, I think, are the thing that have always made him something of a question mark for long-term use as a starter.
I think he's got it. I mean, above average fastball. He was holding his velo. We got a group chat message that it was 97 in the 6th or something.
Jeez.
And so he's holding his velo. He's got a legitimate slider. I mean, like a really, really good slider. And a legitimate splitter. So I think that's by itself is a decent foundation. Yes, the command is going to make it maybe there's possible blow-ups in there. He's had walk rates of 15, 18. There's a 20. That's a short sample, but yeah, you'd expect 11 or 12% walk rate going forward. But it's some of the projections, like ATC has a 408.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a 15-teamer,
not with a great whip. So be careful on your whips. This is someone who has risen to perhaps the team streamer status, and if the command pops, which right now it's okay, 99 location plus is, I would say, better than you'd expect for somebody with a 12% walk rate. So if his command pops, and which that can happen in any given year, that's when you have these sort of, he's better than I expected kind of years. So he's, again, like I would place him above Elder in my decision tree, because he's in the big leagues. Elder is like maybe he's will be, and I would hope that I have a roster spot that you should designate a roster spot for like fungible and maybe I don't play this guy that comes out of this fungible spot. That's Soriano for me. I would put him on that tree.
Yeah, so it sounds like he's a little more for you. Like if Edward Cabrera is here and Joe Boyle's over here, you're a little closer on the Cabrera side of like wild sometimes, but stuff might be good enough to overcome it.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, he's on that spectrum though.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the group of pitchers that show skills like that. So you just have to.
Yeah. I mean, Boyle was running like 15, 18s, you know.
Right.
And
Boyle's walk rates
too.
are just unbelievably scary to try and work through. A few mailbag questions here on our way out the door. We had a question from Michael C. in the Discord. Maybe I've missed if it's covered before, but how do the components of Pitching Plus work together? For example, Aaron Nola has a 106 stuff and location, but a 101 Pitching Plus. Savali has the same Pitching Plus number, but he's a 98-99. And then Ranger Suarez has an 88 stuff and a 105 location, but he's a 101 Pitching Plus. So how should people sort of rectify some of the differences when they see a good or bad Pitching Plus number, but the components don't seem to quite line up the way they might think?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is that Pitching Plus is a third model. It is not a rehashing of the other two models.
It's not an aggregation of the two. It's separate. Yeah.
Yeah. It takes the same inputs that are in Location Plus and Stuff Plus, but it re-spiders them to basically be what longtime readers of mine will understand, that I've done things like Arsenal grades, where I tried to kind of put together a whole grade for the whole arsenal. Pitching Plus could be that someday. Right now, what it ends up being is overly influenced, I think, by early location data. But theoretically, what it could tell you is something like this. Slider command is more important in today's league than changeup command. So I don't care that he has a 110 location on his changeup, because he can't throw that for strikes in counts where he needs it. So Pitching Plus could theoretically say, well, Joe Boyle has slider command, and that might be good enough, even though he has no fastball command. Or this player doesn't have slider command and doesn't have fastball command, and his Location Plus is being propped up by changeup command, and that's just useless. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a theoretical third model where it can kind of look at the arsenal and kind of look at these different things and decide that things are more important than other things. It's overly influenced by Location Plus, so it needs 300, 400 pitches. So it's not that useful in small samples. So I tend to ignore it a lot.
So we need another 2 starts, probably, for most guys.
Yeah, and then
early season stuff.
And especially then if you're talking about like on the pitch level, more than that.
Yeah. All right. Good question, though, Michael. Thanks for sending that our way. Here's one. This is from Mosos1 in the Discord. I love trying to say the tags because I'm sure they're not. Like, I'm emphasizing the wrong character.
But how would we even know? Is there a pronunciation guide?
No, there's no pronunciation guide in the Discord. Come on. How do we not have that yet? It could be like Mosos1.
Mo Sauce. Ooh, I kind of like that.
It could be Moso S1. Like, I don't know. I'm just guessing. I appreciate the questions regardless. Is David Bednar in danger of losing his job as the Pirates closer? So far, 6 earned in 4 1/3, 3 blown saves, 6-1 K to BB, only 1 homer allowed. Is it random bad luck, or is it actually a cause of maybe some stuff deterioration?
I mean, with Aroldis Chapman there's a possibility. You know, Chapman is just the ageless wonder that, you know, if you look at max pitch velocities, he owned like the max pitch velocity in each of the years between like 2016 and 2021 or something. Just like, it's Aroldis Chapman and then Aroldis Chapman again and Aroldis Chapman. And even with the reduction and stuff, he's pretty good. And he, you know, for what it's worth, he's not just a thrower. Like, he's added the sinker and the splitter, and those are his best pitches by Stuff Plus now. So he's changed over time. But I would say that I still think Bednar is the favorite. I think he's still got the job. And what I saw when I watched him was he lost the curveball. One of these blown saves, like, he hit a guy with the curveball. And then you could see, like, there's a Mike Petriello tweet about it where you could see on the scatter chart just like all his curveballs. None of them were anywhere close to the zone. Just so I think there's like maybe he has a blister or like he's just there's something going on with the curveball. But I can't believe that he's just can't ever throw the curveball again.
Yeah, that'd be pretty odd if that's the case. I do think you're right about the presence of Chapman, though. It gives the Pirates a capital P, capital C proven closer that they can go to if Bednar's struggles persist for another few outings. And even if that were to happen, it may only be a temporary demotion because I think Bednar is still that guy long term that they see as their primary source of saves. Multiple people asked us about JP Sears, who in the model seems to have an improved arsenal, but by results, I don't know, seems to be extremely hittable. I mean, 8.68 ERA so far in 2 starts and 4.5% K rate, 92.8% zone contact percentage in these first couple of outings. So what's going on with JP Sears, who's throwing 4 different pitches right now that are above 100 in terms of stuff number and has like a 114 stuff number overall and 103 location and a 108 pitching plus number early on?
Yeah, so there's a piece by Michael Rosen, and his Twitter handle is by Michael Rosen. It's ROSEN. That pointed this out for me. I hadn't seen this myself yet. I would planned on looking at Sears today, and throw up the chart. These are Sears release points. You can see that the difference between his four seam and his sweeper, that's more than 6 inches. And when Rosen put up some screen grabs of the release points, I thought I could see it. It is a question of if hitters can see it and know right away, or if they could tell you with their sort of precognitive brain, like if they could tell you with the brain that speaks that that's what they saw. But I do think that sometimes hitters see things that they can't tell you why they saw it. We know that pre-release information is super important for hitters. So I put these things together and I say, this is a problem for JP Sears.
So you're not looking at JP Sears as a bargain bin, bottom of the waterfall, $1 pickup, expecting things to be good. I mean, the schedule is also kind of important for him, regardless of what you think about his talent. He's got the Cardinals at home, Yankees on the road, and the Orioles on the road as part of a 2-step if you're looking at his next 3 starts from the weekend out. So
you say Yankees on the road?
Yeah, the 2-step for the week of April 22nd would be at the Yankees, at the Orioles. I don't think you want to throw that in most situations. Maybe
the Cardinals at home if you want to but streaming a 1-start guy just doesn't happen in a lot of leagues. So it seems like a miss for me. This was the same problem that Bryce Miller had last year. And what Bryce Miller has done since is change his slider release so it's more like his 4-seam release and go to a splitter. Sears has a good 4-seam. It's a flat 4-seam with great vertical approach angle because he's short and it has more ride than you expect. It is a good 4-seam. His changeup is decent. He could throw a cutter and break out. And it would have lower stuff plus than his sweeper. But the sweeper here is not maybe the best move because people are going to see it. What Bryce Miller ended up using his sweeper for was freeze takes. They see it. They don't swing. If you can get it in the zone, you can get some called strikes. That's the best thing that Sears can do with that sweeper. But it's hard to get pitches with like 15 inches of horizontal into the strike zone. Like the strike zone itself is not that wide. You have to basically throw it at people.
That's got to be uncomfortable.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Like really, like you don't really spend your whole life pitching, throwing at someone. And now you get this pitch that you have to just use a different mindset for. Like that's got to be tough to get over for some people.
Yeah, I filed this in the bin of like maybe not the best sweeper plus player match.
But hey, sweepers are in, so try to add one.
Damn it. Stuff plus screwed me on this one.
On that note, I think it's time for us to go. If you'd like a subscription to The Athletic, they are available at theathletic.com/rates and barrels. If you want to follow Eno on Twitter, Eno is at Enoceris. I'm at Derek Van Riper. The pod is at Rates and Barrels. We have a live stream again on Friday with Trevor May. That's going to be at 1 o'clock Eastern on our YouTube page. So be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done that already. And join us
wrinkle
live.
This week. New segment.
New segment. We are going to solve a problem that major league pitchers haven't been able to solve for about a decade. So how about that? We're going to figure out how to get Mookie Betts out.
Yeah. Good luck.
Easy. Very, very easy, as we learned in an extra long planning meeting on Wednesday. So that's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Friday.
Thanks for listening.